And I feel like really I'm still just on the low edge of utilizing what forage you can grow. Since my son started the dairy, we are doing some temporary forages for the dairy. I do not feel like you can afford any of this in beef cattle. Even the stocker cattle I run, I think it has to be done with perennials. We do have a little bit of eastern gamma grass, which is a pretty high quality, but pretty tricky to manage. And you don't have anything in the winter with it. It's awfully hard to manage a cool season clover mix with any warm season component in it. If I could keep a good stand of Johnson grass, my fescue and clover, I'd be happy. But it's awfully hard to manage to keep a good warm season component in it. But I still think if we concentrate on the winter, really rationing our fescue out with the polywire is going to be some of the highest return. But as far as the economics go, my son majored in economics and finance in college, and he puts a dollar about on everything, which is a good way to do. The grass-based dairy and profitability, I'm not going to be able to touch with stockers or beef cows. Now, it requires more labor and more management, but the profitability is going to be really, really good. And he's really excited about that, and I'm glad I'm on the descent on it. I'm his backup milker, and I enjoy that, but still, it's not for an old man, it's for a young man. But I guess I'm excited about the future. I feel like I can learn still an awful lot more about utilization than I've learned.
I'm Brian Bussing. I'm from Northeast Kansas, Axtell. I have no formal education after high school. Never really had any desire to go to college, I should say. I started doing some paddock subdivisions probably when I got my first farm. I was 20 or so, and I grew up on a row crop farm with Dad had cattle, and we had he had a stupidity monument in the yard, and I still have it there. Don't use it, but so everything that the cattle basically ate was cut and hauled to them, and then we spent the year, hauling the manure back out in the field. And, well, you kind of learn and do what Dad does, and you learn along the way. And about 10 years ago, I decided, or maybe not quite 10 years ago, I thought, this is crazy. I'm working all year long for them animals, and they got 4 legs. I need to make them work for me, because I don't like sitting in a tractor. It bothers my back, and it just ain't something I like to do. So I started educating myself, and I think that's some of the best education, because your education is you're going to learn the hard way and you're going to remember it. When someone's trying to teach you it, you don't always understand it or fully grasp it. So that's kind of where I come from. And about 4 or 5 years ago, I started learning more about the mob grazing, the rotational grazing, mid grazing, whatever anybody wants to call it. Basically, it comes down to management, is what both of them come down. Management and observation. Tina and Richard talk about, observing your animals. It's no different with your land or anything else. Being very observant is where you really learn. And when you're observant, you just begin to understand a lot of things a lot better. And a few years ago, I took out all my fences I had somewhat subdivided, and I tried to make some sense out of it, and built a system, planted my farm ground to grass, and I became a full-time manager of the grass, I should say, and got away from the row crops. And a couple of points of observation. There's a lot of talk about different ways to manage grass, or different ways to manage your cattle, or about we should feed this mineral, or this mineral program's better. One of the most telling signs I see, granted you have to learn to to read what your animals are telling you. You know, well, I know they're trying to tell me something, but I can't quite understand their language yet. You know, and then once I understand that, well, what do I got to do to fix the problem? Well, I use a litmus paper, a pH paper a lot, and you know, the pH of your urine or manure. Some talk one's better than another, but if you're feeding a mineral program and the seed sale or the feed salesman comes out there and he says, well, you know, you need to feed my mineral program or you need to do this. But if your pH of your animal isn't pretty close to neutral, you're wasting your money because you can't utilize it. Okay, so it's a big puzzle. And the thing is, the more we talk to people and the more we learn, the puzzle becomes bigger. So then we have to figure out how to put that puzzle together. Well, and then we keep learning and the puzzle keeps getting bigger. There's people that, you know, we can talk to and we can learn a lot of things from. It's just hard to figure out how to put the puzzle together and figure out what works for everyone, because everything doesn't work exactly the same in every location as other locations. I was in northern Nebraska last week and we were discussing some ideas that some, you know, maybe down in this part of the country would use, and you know, that's totally different grass. And you know, I've talked to quite a few people up there, and some of the things they've tried, and it don't work quite the same up there. And we had a pretty good conversation on the way to the tours that we were on. And one thing I made a comment, you know, everybody talks about the diversity of their grass and their pastures. But one thing I think we're missing is the diversity of our animals also in our pastures, how they can complement one another. And I don't think anybody knows as far as we can go, you know, how great we can make this, or how great our land can become. You know, Richard talked about his organic matter. You know, that's a good measuring tool. Nobody knows how far, you know, nobody knows what the land was like before we got here. You know, some can estimate it, but nobody was here to test it and to see what the organic matter was. So I think there's a lot to learn. It's an exciting group of people to be acquainted with, because nobody knows the limit. You know, it's just an exciting group of people to come around and meet with people like you and like I was in northern Nebraska. There's just so much to learn, and that there's a lot of good attitude about it.
How many people here have livestock other than cattle? Have sheep, goats, hogs, poultry? Quite a diversified group. As they touched on up here, and the reason we're all here is we firmly believe in education as well as the tools, because you have to know how to get the best use out of them. And along with that is on-farm experiments, you know, where we prove to ourselves what works and what doesn't work on our own properties. Does anybody here have any questions of any of these folks on any class of livestock? Ray?
I had a question for Ray. If he was a young man, Ray, if you were a young man starting out today, what would your advice be to a young fella?
Well, I would concentrate on livestock ownership first, and probably rented land. In my neck of the woods, land is awfully expensive to purchase now and pay for with livestock. So I'd start out with ownership of the livestock, and I'd keep equipment expenses to a minimum. We host a lot of farm tours at home. A lot of them look at Andy's dairy, a lot of them look at my beef cattle because of some notoriety I've gotten in the state. But they're amazed that we operate that farm. We've got one tractor, one bush hog, one stock trailer, and a four-wheeler. Actually, two four-wheelers now, and that's it. They can't believe it can be done. And I was pretty proud of myself when I visited Gordon Hazard. We spent a day with Gordon last year, and he's got 1,800 head, 3,000 acres. Somebody made the comment, well, Dr. Hazard, why don't you even have one tractor? And Dr. Hadley, he took his finger, scratched that hay a little bit. He said, well, my operation just ain't big enough to justify it. I love that concept. But a lot of the talks I make, I say the three things that will get you in the beef cattle business, and it's a low margin business, particularly cow-calf. I say it's feed, fuel, and fertilizer. You got to watch those 3 F's. We use very little diesel fuel. Since I started rotational grazing, we cut the bush hogging down. I haven't put up any hay since 1999. And I didn't feed a single bale of hay until 2007 when we had the drought years. But around home, you can purchase hay a lot cheaper than you can make it. Particularly if you consider the amount of nutrients you're bringing on your farm, it's a no-brainer. Jim Garrish does a wonderful. If you don't have Jim Garrish's book on no hay, you ought to get it. I mean, on getting the hay out. He and I talked a little bit. I encouraged him to write it, but he put it in the context what I wish I was a writer could do. He really covers that great. But talking to cattle groups around the state, the wintering cost is what gets people. And that's people that's got 25 or 30 cows, that's got a hay baler, and a rake, and a mower, and 2 tractors. You can make a profitable economic model out of this. But I'd concentrate on the animal ownership, and I'd do multi-species grazing if I was younger. People are doing a great job with hair sheep. You know Greg Brown in Tennessee. I visited Greg's farm again in the summer. We go peek each other's farm. He's grazing goats, sheep, hair sheep, and cattle all. And the hair sheep is the most profitable enterprise to get. The goats are next, and the commercial cow calves are third. And every time I go, his cow herd shrinks, his goat herd goes up. I mean, his hair sheep herd goes up. So I would keep an open mind on species, but I'd sure concentrate on keeping the machinery costs down and the livestock numbers up on leased land if I was young.
Anybody else have any questions on any type of grazing, any problems you've had through this summer in particular? We'd like to thank.
I'd like to make one comment on the expense charter. I've got a couple of comments.
You talk too much.
I'm kind of frugal. In fact, I've been called downright cheap. Don't even think about buying a fishing charger without a remote if you can afford a remote. I've got a big daddy that runs our whole farm. But on this lease farm, I needed one that would operate on the battery for part of it, because part of it doesn't have AC on it. So I bought one of the 6 eyes. But I just wasn't going to buy one that I couldn't use a remote. Part of this farm on one side of the creek, part of the other. But those remotes will save you so much time, it is unbelievable. And I know they look pricey, and they are pricey. But your time's worth something too. And don't even consider it. If you can afford a 6-eye, instead of getting a 3 or a 2 or a 1, that remote is worth the money, I'll tell you.
And to go along with that, a little bit of a commercial. Remember, there's 10% off on all the True Test electronics this weekend. So now is the time to buy it. You know how much that is on the 63 joule charger? You save hundreds. Yes, yeah.
Philip from Kansas. You're a young man. So what do your generation think? You know, you've gotten out of crops and you're in Kansas. What do your buddies think about you?
That's why I come here to talk to people. Or to go to northern Nebraska. I mean, it's literally, there's a few people in the area, but not very many of them are young people. I mean, even my family, they don't see things the way I see them, you know, and everybody sees things different. I try to explain it as the crooked Jesus sign up there that you got to look half cross-eyed and upside down before you can see the word Jesus in it. You know, once you can see it, it's a lot clearer, and everything else becomes, you know, clear, and you can understand it. You don't question some of that, but you know, a lot of people my age, they haven't seen it, so they don't understand it. I think, you know, one of the questions, or with the generation, I think my generation or the younger generation maybe is, you know, let's say the soccer mom or the mother of young kids or whatever. they're probably the biggest, you know, if you're into the grass-fed products, the sheep, the beef,